you guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about 5 topics to prevent injuries while also trying to build strength in your legs. So the first thing on the list is going to be mobility. Believe it or not, limited mobility can actually prevent you from furthering your goals or even increasing strength in your legs. The first thing that we're going to go over is some things that I personally do just to kind of help me because I have very stiff hips and ankles. So yeah, let's get into it. So the first exercise we're going to go over here is called the cat-cow. So the cat-cow is really good for increasing mobility in your spine and pelvis. So when you're doing this, you want to be on all fours, so on your hands and knees. You want to start off by bending the spine this way, so you really want to flex at the spine, creating an arch in your back, feeling a little stretch, and then also go in the opposite direction. Go in here, hold for a few seconds, and then back up, hold, down. So as you're seeing here, we're moving both the spine and the pelvis. So as you come in here, you're tucking in your core. That's a very important part here. So you want to tuck in, push up, coming down, create an arch, and just doing this for a few repetitions. When I do this, I usually go for about 2 or 3 sets of 15, just to kind of loosen up the tissues in the back, create some more mobility in the hips and the spine. So that's the first one. Okay, so now we're going to be going over some stretches that I personally do that help me improve some hip mobility. So the first ones are going to be hip external rotator stretch and also a piriformis stretch. So the first one, we're going to have you lie on your back, and then in this position, first one, we're going to have you cross the ankle over right here, and then you want to push the knee out. And again, everybody's going to be different for this, so you want to push to your tolerance until you feel a comfortable stretch. Hold for about 2 sets of 30 seconds. And then the next one is going to be a piriformis stretch. So with this one, you want to pull up at an angle, kind of towards the opposite shoulder. And again, for this one, hold again 2 sets of 30 seconds. So the piriformis is a muscle that's deep underneath your gluteals, and sometimes it's pretty hard to stretch this muscle, so that's why it's good to do this one. And when you're done doing that, and then you just switch sides and do the same thing. So yeah, those are some good hip mobility stretches. All right, so let's get into the next one. Okay, so now we're going to be going over an exercise that I do that helps me increase mobility in my ankles. So typically what I do is I put my toes about 4 to 5 inches away from a wall, or in this case a door. Either or works. And then from here, you want to lean forward until your knee touches the wall. Coming back. And while you're doing this, it's important to keep your foot flat the entire time. That way you can get a good stretch in your calf. So just going back and forth. And I typically go for about 2 to 3 sets of 10. And then I go ahead and switch sides. But yeah, that's a good exercise for increasing mobility in your ankles, which is important whenever you're doing any kind of squatting exercise. All right, so that's it for mobility. Let's go ahead and get into the next topic. The next topic we're going to be talking about is genu valgus. What genu valgus basically means is the positioning or like a medial collapse of the knee. What this means is whenever you're going to bend down or bend at the hips and knees, the knees tend to cave inward. So that's genu valgus. And people that typically present with genu valgus are people that have weak hip abductors. And yeah, I mean, I've caught myself a few times when I'm lifting pretty heavy. When I go down, the knees kind of cave in a little bit. So here are a few exercises that I personally do that help me build strength in my hip abductors. All right, you guys, so first hip abductor strengthening exercise that I like to do is the infamous clam shell. Yes, it's a very basic exercise, but it tends to help a lot when it comes to building hip abduction strength. So to do this exercise, what you want to do is lie on your side. And you typically want to have your back straight, so you don't want to lean backwards, you don't want to lean too far forward. What you want is to lie directly on your side. And while you're in this position, knees together, feet together, and then you're going to want to lift up the top leg without having your hips come back. So that's the trick to this one. So you really want to have your knee come up, back down, up, down, nice, slow and controlled. And with this, you can either do it without a band to start off, or you could add a resistance band around your knees, which is typically what I do. But just for demonstration purposes, we're gonna go like this without a band. So with this, I personally do about 2 to 3 sets of 15 on this one. But ultimately, again, it's up to you. If you're starting off, 2 sets of 10 is okay, but just until you feel a good burn, you're gonna feel like it's your hips, but we're actually working on your gluteus medius and gluteus minimus. But yeah, this really helps on that hip abduction strength. All right, let's get into the next one. All right, you guys, so second hip abductor strengthening exercise that I like to do is just some resisted lateral steps. I typically use a resistance band. So I put this around my ankles. If you want to make it a little bit easier, you could always put it above the knees. And for this one, what I like to do is I get into a slight athletic stance. So knees slightly bent, hips slightly bent. And in this position, you want to step to the sides, always keeping some resistance on the band. So just like this. And I typically do this for about like 20 feet in one direction, 20 feet back. And you also want to lead with your heel. You don't want to like step like this, or else you're going to be going in a circle. So you really want to have your toes pointed straight ahead, get into that athletic stance, and taking those steps to the sides. That's another good exercise that always burns my hips quite a bit. But yeah, that's the second hip abductor stretch that I like to do. Okay, you guys, so the next exercise is going to be increasing ankle strength. So we already went over mobility. An exercise that I like to do that's very simple, again, just using a resistance band. For this, I tend to just put a band around my foot, grab onto one end like this, and with this you want to go into plantar flexion, and up, plantar flexion, nice and slow. And as you can already tell, my ankle's kind of weak there. There we go. Once you do a few there, then you can go into E version, which is out this way. There you go. And in that same position, putting the band still around the toes, making one foot longer than the other, and just coming down and up. So you want to go into dorsiflexion now, so pointing the toes up towards you. So we already went into E version going this way, and we can go into inversion by crossing the feet and just going the other way, this way. So yeah, those are some good ankle strengthening exercises that I like to do. So now we're going to get into core strength. Core strength plays a huge role when you're doing any type of leg strengthening exercises, especially with squats and deadlifts. So if you don't have a strong core, you're going to have a lot of back stress or a lot of back pain. So two very simple exercises that really help engage your core are a simple TA or transverse abdominis activation, and also some posterior pelvic tilts. We're going to go ahead and start off with the transverse abdominis activation. So with this one, you want to have your knees bent, back flat against the table. And to activate your TA, the best way is putting your fingertips on your hip bones, going inward about 2 or 3 inches, and then coughing. So you want to give a cough, and when you feel that squeeze, you want to try doing that same thing but without coughing. So you want to squeeze, tucking that belly button almost as if you're trying to drive it back into the spine. You should feel your back kind of flatten out on the table, and then relax. With these, I like to do these about 2 or 3 sets of 15. So squeeze, relax, just trying to bring that belly button down into the table. So now, once you got that one down, now we can do a posterior pelvic tilt. Now this isn't really lifting the hips off the table. All it is like you're rotating the pelvis back like this, so tucking in that TA again, and then back to neutral, so you roll this way. Rolling the hips back and back to neutral. Notice how I'm not really lifting off the table. I'm actually flattening the back onto the table. There we go. So again, 2 to 3 sets of 15 of these really gets the core tightened up there. So yeah, those are a few abdominal or core strengthening exercises that I like to do as well. All right, let's get into the next topic. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to talk about today is going to be hip hinge. So whenever you're squatting, it's very important to keep the back straight. So I actually grabbed this towel at Home Depot for like $2. So I like to use this to help me realign my back, so I'm having contact with the back of my head, the middle of my back, and my pelvis back here. So holding on to it like this, making sure it's making contact with all those 3 points, and then coming down. So this really helps with keeping your back straight while you're squatting, because this is not going to allow you to go too far back, too far forward. It's just the right amount of bend in your hips. And again, you can either practice this while bending your knees or starting off by just doing little hip hinges like this. Really retraining your body to keep that back straight, tuck it in your core the entire time while you're doing this. Because sometimes, if you're not using that, if you don't really get used to that form, if you squat very heavy weights, you might see more of this where your back is doing more of the work. And when you're actually squatting, whether it be with weights or without, it's actually very important to have a good ratio between your tibia and your back. So here, if you notice, we're not really getting too much bend in the back, so it's putting way too much stress on my knees, and that could lead to an injury. Another way you can see another injury is by doing the opposite thing. So we're not going to bend too much at the knees, but too much on the back. So notice how my shins or my tibias are not really that bent, but my back is doing all the work. That's another way people get injured as well. So you always want to try to have your shins at the same angle as your back. And it's also very important to keep your feet shoulder width apart, and maybe even having your feet slightly angled outward, so that way you can get a little bit more glute activation. So from here, you want to go here and back. When you're doing this, you should feel the weight being translated through the middle or the arch of your foot. It shouldn't be too far on your heels or too far on your toes. So you want to go here and up. So here, as you can see, my shins are now angled forward, and they should be at the same angle as my back. And here. And as you can tell, now that I'm squatting, now I can have good ankle strength, hip mobility, ankle mobility, and also just having overall proper form, proper technique, and that'll definitely help you prevent injuries and help you with building strength in your legs. All right, thank you guys for watching. I'll keep you guys up to date on the next video. Make sure to like and subscribe.